I've heard about it for a long, long time. I mean, when I first heard about it, I didn't know all the stuff I know now about it. I thought of it as just this, ooh, happy place we might end up one day. Then I, hear it mentioned later as this object that's going to cause problems, and I says, well, damn it, 83, I remember hearing about it. So I've always given it some credence, and that's why I cover it, and that's why I'm waiting for somebody to say, hey, there it is, because I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I just don't know where.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, right now, this is a key time in history for the human race because the Atacama large meter submillimeter array of radio telescopes, 66 radio telescopes set together in an array, has detected radio of electromagnetic energy radiating, transmitted back, radiated from sublight portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And it has detected what they say is Planet X. They believe it's very likely Planet X. They're trying to be scientifically conservative in their response, in their report, which is quite responsible of them, because that's the way scientists should operate. When they see something, they think they know it's Planet X. They cannot declare that it is, but they can say it might be. Let's check it out. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, yeah, I learned my lesson the hard way too. There's been a few times in my radio career that I thought that, hey, this is it, and I passed it around, and it came back to bite me. Although I was, man enough to admit that I made a mistake, and others out there don't.
Well, we all do. I mean, that's you've shown that you're human. I've made mistakes too. So, but we continue on, and that is what human nature is. The honest form of human nature should be about. Is you try your best to be truthful and to the best of your ability, and you recognize your own mistakes. Those who ignore their mistakes are don't have the integrity, I guess, or they have too much pride to admit it, and it's a shortcoming of all of us, I guess.
Exactly. Hey, John, we've got a couple good questions in the chat, and it'd be nice if they private message them to me because they are good questions. One says, makes you wonder why a comet doesn't just keep on going. Surely the pull of the sun, etc., isn't that strong so far out, but I could be wrong. So that's a good question. How come how much pull does the sun have on how far out? Can it affect these objects?
Okay. Comets very often come close to the sun. I mean, that happens all the time. They come into our solar system. Some of them get so close that they actually crash into the sun. I mean, we've seen that with the SOHO satellite in space, which sits out there and constantly monitors the sun. You see these, looks like discs or frisbees flying into the sun. You'll see this from time to time. Yeah. And these are comets that are actually got sucked right into the sun. Some of them graze the side of the sun and are destroyed. So it happens quite a bit. Now, it's a function, the amount, how far in a comet will come toward the sun is a function of the velocity of the comet, which means it's related to its momentum, and the mass of the comet. So you take the mass times the velocity, and in physics, mass times velocity is equal to momentum. So it's the mass of the comet, its velocity at the time, all of these things, and of course the velocity is determined by its distance from the sun at that any given time, and because the distance creates a gravitational. The distance is a function of the gravitational pull of the sun, and the greater the gravitational pull, the greater the acceleration, the greater velocity, etc. So it's a variable thing. I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
And oh no, it's quite all right. And there's a kind of a follow-up on this. That first question was from Bear. He said not quite a question, but I thought it was worth bringing up. JH says, why hasn't Venus and Mercury been sucked into the sun or burnt like charcoal?
Well, because, okay.
Oh, go ahead. No,
they are revolving around the sun. Earth would crash into the sun too, except that Earth is revolving around the sun. And it's a centrifugal force, that outward centrifugal, fuge, from the word fugitive or fleeing, centrifugal force, which is a force which is directed away from the center of an object traveling in a circular motion, that prevents any object, such as a planet, from being pulled in by the centripetal or center-seeking force of the center pulling object, such as the sun. So you have the centripetal force of the sun pulling the object in, and then you have at the same time, coincidentally, you have the centrifugal or outward fleeing force of an object. As you know, when you're driving your car and you make a sharp left turn, what's going to happen? Or make a fast left turn at 90 degrees,
you're going to fly.
Your body
right.
is pulled to the right, along the right side of your seat. And this would be centrifugal, an example of centrifugal force pulling away. And that's what prevents the planets from crashing into the sun.
Oh, okay. And now somebody had asked also, he thought Mercury didn't rotate. I didn't know that. Mercury doesn't rotate?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that. You know, Earth rotates every 24 hours, and that's what gives us day and night. But while Earth is rotating, it's also revolving around the sun, and it takes roughly 365 days for Earth to make one full revolution around the sun, and each day is one rotation. So it's wonderful how God set up this synchronicity of motion to create a viable life on planet Earth.
It is incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. So you can't deny
it. Cannot be a coincidence. It cannot be. It's just too astounding and too unlikely to be a coincidence.
Yeah, you cannot deny that there's some intelligence somewhere behind this. I mean, and it's not just us, but there's other solar systems out there that I'm sure are just as lively, if not more so.
Well, just imagine how great God is. He would have created maybe countless solar systems and galaxies with life so abundant that we just can't imagine the magnitude and the vast numbers of life forms that are out there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's just amazing, and makes you realize that when you stop and think about it, God, according to the people, men who have been contacted by God and who show evidence that they were not crazy, but they were actually given messages from God. These men say that this Creator who spoke to them, perhaps even in thoughts, doesn't even have to be a voice, just thoughts in their mind. They are told that God is trying desperately to get us to recognize His presence and to commune with Him. You know, suppose your father was invisible, and you knew he existed because he kept on putting food on your table every day.
Yeah.
And the dishes got washed somehow, miraculously, and everything was there prepared for you, and yet you knew he was there, but yet you never bothered to even talk to him, even though just because he was invisible. Well, that's how God feels. He feels hurt because He loves us so much. And He's telling us that He is bringing destruction on Earth, and it seems like He's wrathful and angry. But the purpose, He says, is to wake us up to His existence so that He can take us into eternity, take our lives and give us eternal life in a world in this world renewed and far and devoid of all evil, of filled with nothing but love and joy, away from this flawed world. He wants to take us, but he has to have us recognize him in order for us to gain entry into this eternal life. So God doesn't want us just to die, go and have our bodies laid out in a funeral parlor, and now you're dead and everybody cries over you, and then they forget you. They just don't talk about you anymore because it's too sad. So you become a forgotten being that's
right.
now decaying in the ground. God does not want that to happen. He wants you and I to go on to another eternal life, never-ending life, with a brand new body that will never disintegrate, never age, never become diseased, and cannot be damaged or injured in any way. That's what God promises us in the Scriptures, that we will be resurrected with a new body, indestructible. And if you look at the spirit of the body, or the essence, it is spirit, it's energy. It's like electromagnetic light. Many people of spiritual nature who are not necessarily Christians believe that. They sense that we are energy, that energy exists forever. So this is the purpose for this great destruction that comes on earth, because if we didn't have these great cataclysms, we would all be fat, dumb, and happy, and we would watch television and enjoy all the goodies of life and, just have vacation and get a job and get old and retire and die. God doesn't want us that. He wants us wants to shake us and wake us.
I don't want that either.
Exactly. So it's an act of love, much more than an act of wrath, that God claims to actually be bringing Planet X upon us. Now, this is a miracle. I'm glad we got off onto this subject here, as I was in the midst of reading a 1983 New York Times article about an hour ago, which I hope to get back to.
Yeah, hold that thought right there. We'll get back to it. We do have to take a break, John. So hang on with us, and we'll pick right back up. We can get to that article and anything else you like. And folks, I hope John's right. I hope it's all right. Not that I doubt that there's something on the other side. I know there is. I hope that they're right. I hope it's as great and it's all good. And that's all you could do, really, is hope, right? That's why I do this show every night, because I have hope. And I'm hoping that one day somebody will show me more and more, because even though I've had experiences and I've seen things, that's great, and that lends me to knowing that there's more to it than just this every day, right? But you always need more. It's like we just, if you don't crave for more, I wouldn't want to be you. People who think they know it all and that's all, it's just, I crave to know. I want to know. I want to have an out-of-body experience every night. I want to see a UFO every night. I want to experience these things as much as I can, and everybody should. And I want the truth. Is there a planet in our neighborhood, or a brown dwarf star in our neighborhood? And has it got our number on it? Well, some say yes. We'll be back, folks. This is Late Night. Believe me, I was looking, and I didn't see anything around the vicinity of the sun. So, I hear that it's coming from an angle that you might not be able to detect so easily. But I'm trying. I'm telling you this. I'm trying. So the website, www.latenightinthemidlands.com. Go on over, become a member, and be informed. And by all means, inform others, folks. Support us. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We've given away more subscriptions, I think, than we've actually sold, I guess you could say. I don't know what to say. Call it. So I guess sold, right? So we've given away a lot. I mean, there's people who have said, hey, I can't afford it. They've been regular listeners. I know they've been regular listeners because I've seen them in the chat and this, that. And we've given away. We've done contests and given away plenty of subscriptions. So it's really not about the money. Unfortunately, folks, we do need money to keep the lights on here. We do need money to do what we do. No, we don't need 60 grand a month, and we don't need 30 some grand a month like some. but we do need enough to keep things on. So, I mean, what we get here is really a drop in the bucket, but it's just enough to keep things going. And so we ask you to keep supporting us. Believe me, if it comes to a time where subscriptions are so dominant that we don't have to ask for donations, I won't ask for donations. Right now we have to, because that's what keeps us going. I've been doing this for, September will be 9 years. I've been doing this. And for 8 of those years, everything was absolutely in the open and free for everybody, always. We still have our content. A lot of it goes on YouTube, a channel that we've given permission to put our stuff on. So, I mean, it's still there. I mean, it's not like it's costing everybody, to see everything. I don't charge for people to chat with me during the show or send me messages during the show. And so, I mean, we try to keep as much free as we can. The only reason there's subscriptions, there's 2 reasons. 1, to help support us, and 2, because we had a lot pirating our show here. And I can't let people do that. I mean, they're taking it, cutting out our any mention of who the host was or the show was, and they were making it like it was theirs. And, and then they were putting all these advertisements in it and making a ton on us. So we were really forced to do it. And, it's not so bad, because we give you access to the archives. We also give you access to our L&M forums, where you're free to post and do all those things, share videos and pictures and so on. Insider videos we give you as well. And, and again, we give away a lot of subscriptions. So I don't feel bad for asking for a subscription finally after after 8 years of never putting anything behind a locked door. And I'll tell you, when we do certain shows, and here's another thing. If a guest says, Michael, will you send me the MP3 of that show? I'll give it to them to post on their website. So, unlike some others. So, if for instance, if John DiNardo wants tonight's show because he wants to share it, I give it to him to do that. So, again, it's really not about the money. Unfortunately, we do need your help to do what we do. And I'll stop harping about that. Now I'll get back to John DiNardo. John,
I understand your point, Michael, because I know that your biggest interest in life is bringing the truth, especially spiritual and esoteric truth, to people, because you're fascinated by it. This is the great hunger that many of us have, not just material substance, but spiritual, and the quest for truth beyond what we see in front of our eyes. And I know that's what drives you and drives me too. What I do to help others is I make it very easy for myself. It's getting harder because I'm donating to a lot of people right now, but what I do is make an easy $5 a month PayPal donation, and I make it automatic so I don't have to remember. Otherwise, I would never remember to make the donation every month. So I go to PayPal and I donate $5, and I just check the box that says make this a monthly donation. And I do that now. I'm up to about 10 different worthy people that I find as reporters and information specialists.
And I
so
appreciate
it's getting up to
that.
be like $50 a month, because I'm donating $5 a month to 10 people, and I made an annual subscription to Late Night in the Midlands also. But that's what I do, and you can urge people to do it. Hey, look, $5 is not, you're not going to notice it. That's like $1.25 a week.
No,
you won't notice it.
That's right. And John, I thank you. And I know you're not just saying that. You do support the ones that support the truth. I've seen you doing it for years, and I appreciate that.
I mean, I don't want to die with money left over. And I want to give it to worthy causes and to spend whatever I have on the truth, which is part of God, because God, one of the aspects of God is truth. And this is more important. I mean, as long as we have enough food to survive on, the truth is what we need to spend our money on. So I just hope that people will realize that, hey, look, it's like being on a ship and trying to deny if that ship is sinking, if you're on the Titanic, if the ship is sinking, trying to deny that it's sinking and to deny that there's water coming in merely because your cabin is warm and the lights are still on. So why not just pull the covers over your head and try to ignore the fact that the ship is sinking?
That's right.
We don't want that to happen with good people around us, good people who are our ship of truth.
Yeah, and the ship really is sinking. I've got actually going to be doing a show, recording a show with Peter Kling on Christmas Eve, and I'll probably run it on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and he really believes that the end times are here, and that's what he's going to focus on, and I'm I'm going to join him in the conversation. So we're going to do an hour this Christmas Eve. Based on that. So, I mean, it seems to be, I even seen, John, I not kid you, I was looking, shopping around for some stuff for the little guys, right? And there's this SpongeBob. I seen this, it was advertised, a Apocalypse SpongeBob playset. I mean, it was literally a playset teaching the kids of the apocalypse and getting ready for it.
Yeah, we see many signs of that in our society around us, in the media. So, indeed, the movies that they've been putting out are trying to give us a message. And very often when the truth is suppressed, those people with higher capabilities in the media will give us information that's fictionalized, give us the truth in fictional forms so that they can bypass the diabolical ruling elite who suppress the truth for their own greedy purposes. So, yeah, we're seeing movies coming out about this. The movie 2012 was perhaps maybe designed to tell people, well, okay, here's an apocalypse that we're saying is going to occur in 2012, and lo and behold, it never happened. So it was just a myth. It's not true. Maybe the purpose of the movie 2012 was to do just that, was to disillusion people. But still, it left an impression. And when people see that now, they're beginning to see this tiny red dot in the sky, first discovered by the Atacama Large Meteor Array in Chile in December of 2015, and now it's 2016, and we're beginning to see a tiny little red glowing dot in the sky, and it gets bigger and bigger as the weeks go by. Well, when they see that, they'll look back to 2012 and say, wait a minute, let me go see that movie now. It's really beginning to mean something to me. Well, so I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And, I look back at some of these older movies, and I see stuff in these movies that now are relevant, very relevant. One was an old Superman movie with Christopher Reeve and Richard Pryor was in it. And they were actually, one of the things he did was took control of a satellite and a weather weapon satellite in space. And at the time you think, ha, 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 right? But now they have this. So it was almost like they were telling us then that they had it. And this was, I think, late 70s, maybe early 80s.
Right, and that old movie now takes on greater significance in regard to current events. So yeah, that's true. And I guess should get back to the article.
Sure.
But before I do, I just wanted to say that one of the fields of evidence is the periodicity, the regularity of the return of this object. It's a brown dwarf star, which could be classified as a planet also. There's different names given to it. A brown dwarf star, which it is, a planet, which it is also, because we know Jupiter has the same makeup as a incipient or a newborn brown dwarf star, and Jupiter is called a planet also. So a gas giant such as Jupiter or brown dwarf called Planet X can also be called planets. But also, one other thing is this planet X, because it travels on a cometary orbit, it's considered a massive comet too. And comets, let me give you an analogy. So, and you know, as a former high school physics teacher, I can tell you that the greatest motivation of a teacher is to create a realization in the student's mind, such a realization that that student will think, wow, aha, I understand now, I see what he's saying, and it makes sense. That's what the impression I want to bring to the minds of people. And I'm going to try to show them visually what's happening and how we can look back 36 and a half centuries ago and another 36 and a half centuries before that and see geological evidence of great destruction occurring throughout and across planet Earth. And one of the examples to show how this object is periodic like a comet is to explain the theory, and this was given in the past by scientists, and it was also stated in the New Science and Invention Encyclopedia.
Okay.
Of I should remember that. I know I've got it in a book somewhere. New Science and Invention Encyclopedia, somewhere time in the 1987. That's it, the 1987 edition. I could show you the actual photocopy of it. It stated that there was this object, Planet X, and it revolves around two planets, two stars. One is a distant star, billions and billions of miles away, that is our sun's twin sun. And so this object, Planet X, according to the New Science and Invention Encyclopedia, the 1987 edition, which we have a picture of, is Planet X's brown dwarf star revolves around two suns, a distant dead sun, which no longer lights up, but it's still there in great mass, and our sun. And I liken that to two tennis players. Imagine you're looking at a tennis game on television, and the tennis player in the near court is our sun. The tennis player in the far court is our sun's twin sun, a dead sun, many billions of miles away. And the tennis ball is this brown dwarf star, Planet X, that is being batted back and forth by the two tennis players. And if they bat it back and forth at regular intervals, rhythmically, it's very much like what's happening with Planet X. There's a force the tennis player exerts on the ball when he hits the ball that sends that ball out to the far court, and the tennis player back there hits it, exerts another force in the opposite direction to bring it back, and you have a continuing cycle. And if it was regular, like a pendulum, which this object is like a celestial pendulum, the time it takes for it to make one complete cycle from the player in the near court back to the player in the near court again, one complete cycle, would be regular, constant every cycle. And that's what we have with this cometary orbit. That's this definition of a cometary orbit. And this planet is batted back and forth due to the gravitational pull of each sun. It loops around the sun. It's a phenomenon that it doesn't crash into the sun, but it loops around it. Because as it approaches the sun, there's a repulsion force due to their magnetic fields. This is a theory, but it makes sense. And that's why they don't crash. The round dwarf star never crashes into the sun. If it crashed into our sun, we'd have serious problems. We would have probably the destruction of planet Earth as a result of the energy that would be released. So we know this object has come in the past many times over the past millennia. So it loops around the sun without destroying the sun. Now, just imagine as the object comes close, it's coming toward the sun, let's say the distant sun, and it's going to not hit it but pass by it. What's going to happen is going to overshoot the sun. When it overshoots the sun, what is that distant sun going to do? It's still pulling on it, but now it's pulling the object back in the opposite direction because the object has overshot that distant sun, and now that distant sun is still exerting a gravitational pull, but it's a pulling back of the object. So the net effect is the object makes a circular U-turn around the sun and is slingshotted back, just as our lunar module did when they went to the moon, or supposedly, or in other space missions where there was a module that was slingshotted around the moon to go back to the Earth, and that's scientifically proven because we've done it already. Our government has done it. So that's how this object makes its regular travel back and forth, like a tennis ball being batted back and forth by two tennis players, analogous to our sun and our Earth, sun's distant dead sun. Okay, enough of that. That's why it's periodic. Now let's show the proof that it's periodic. 36.5 centuries ago, we have great evidence from various fields indicating that Earth underwent tremendous destruction. We have, first of all, the account from the Bible in the book of Genesis of the Israelites being liberated by God from Egyptian bondage, and there were earth disasters that accompanied it. There were 10 plagues that are described in the Bible. There were a whole variety of different disasters, and we can expect those disasters to occur again on planet Earth. So if you read the book of Exodus, you'll be reading tomorrow's news today. It tells about, first of all, the destruction of the fish in the ocean began dying. That was one of the first signs. Well, what do we have today? We're seeing that now, great die-offs of fish. That was described in the book of Exodus, which geologists tell us occurred around 36.5 centuries ago. First, the fish died off, and then I'm trying to recollect all the various plagues. It was like a litany, a series of disasters. One precipitated another. The fish died off in the ocean, and then, as a result, the frog population expanded to a point where it became disastrous. There were frogs everywhere. And, of course, that would be caused by changing biological conditions in the waters. The oceans turned red. We see red tide today. We see a lot of the signs of those disasters that occurred described in the book of Exodus 36.5 centuries ago. And then following that, there was great diseases that killed the cattle, plagues that occurred. That was part of the whole series, that litany of disasters. So we could expect that to happen, diseases. I think we're seeing it already. And then it got worse to a point where there were bombardments of Earth by meteors. And many of them were electrical. Some of them could have been also by the weather. We have bombardments of Earth due to hailstones, massive hailstones, unprecedented in size. So you could see them on YouTube. You could see them on the Weather Channel. And I've been following the Weather Channel for a long time, and I've videotaped reports of hailstones as large as grapefruits, and they showed it.
They're giving out warnings for this Christmas era. With the weather being so warm, that they expect tornadoes to be kicking up in different places.
That is crazy. You're right. I mean, this is extremely worrisome to see such wild weather. And it's been going on for at least a decade now, because I've got videotape documentation of it from the Weather Channel. And I mean, floods are so horrendous, epic floods, epic droughts. We tend to forget them, but if you look back at the records, I could never go through all the videotapes I have of these disasters. I recall a few. I mean, we're going back like, 2005. I remember I have on videotape somewhere in a box of videotapes, 6-hour videotapes, picture of a car hanging from a tree. The car was able to hang from the tree because the river, the water on dry land in a community got so high that the car floated up to the top of a tree and was hanging there when the water receded.
Well, we had historic floods here in Columbia, South Carolina. Well, pretty much the whole state.
I remember that.
Yeah, we got hammered here. I mean, we had some historic buildings right off over here in Lexington that collapsed because the ground under them had like rivers flowing underneath them, and they just gave out. I mean, I seen houses missing. There's sections of roads still missing here.
That's right.
So yeah, it's
and with the extremes too. We go to the other extreme where the drought has been so intense in some areas, and I have this on videotape from the Weather Channel also, where the houses were beginning to sink and crumble and their foundations because the ground got so dry and parched that it began to contract and crack, and the houses were collapsing. The foundations were breaking up because of this extreme dryness. And then all of a sudden, it changed in Texas. It went from extreme drought to extreme flooding and storms. I mean, it was so, I feel sorry for the people in Texas and actually everywhere when you stop and think about it. Charleston, South Carolina, that whole area.
And they're still dealing with problems. I mean, it's not over yet. People don't hear much about it now, but I mean, there's still water draining off. It's still continued to rain here. I mean, we've still gotten a lot of rain since then. So, you know, I'm sure the lower part of the state is still dealing in areas, I'm sure, with floodwaters.
Well, you know, that's kind of scary because when you have that much weight from water, Charleston is already an earthquake.
I know.
Earthquake time bomb.
I think about it all the time. We're right on the border of that fault, right? So if that shook, I would certainly feel it.
Yeah, that's why we got to stay attuned to earthquake signs. I believe in California there was a great earthquake that was followed great flooding. So sometimes great flooding is an indication of an earthquake.
I agree with that. There's been plenty of cases where, and I think that it's almost scientifically proven that the water will act as a lubricant. You get too much of it, and the plates shift, and it's on.
Right. It's the water, the lubricating effect of the water, and also the weight.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of weight. I was seeing a documentary about a dam. Yeah, I remember now. It was somewhere, one of the science channels. This huge dam was holding so much water that it caused the earth to shift and actually precipitated an earthquake.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. A lot of dams gave here, a lot of levees broke here in South Carolina, but the one that didn't was the Lake Murray Dam. Thank God, because if that one had given out, I wouldn't have escaped the floodwaters. A lot of people wouldn't have. Columbia would have been like a small ocean here. So,
well, I'm sad to say that we're going to see worsening of these extreme weather disasters, and that's why we have to get prepared. For example, you can't move out of your house. I understand you're stuck there just like I'm stuck in my house. But you can prepare. For example, think about, everybody listening, and tell your friends too, because you have to warn. This is a show the subject that you need to tell others about.
Well, here's the thing, John. I could go anywhere in the country I want right now. The only problem is Autumn's not having it. She wants to stay with family. So, and I don't want to leave either. So I'm with it. I mean, the way I see it, if the man upstairs needs me to leave to survive, then I will get that warning, and hopefully I don't overlook it.
That's right. Keep in contact mentally with God. And it seems difficult to do, but during my day, what I try to do is constantly, and it's difficult too because there are demonic forces, believe it or not, entities that do not want us to commune with God. which is why most people are unaware of God, because of these demonic entities. We call them fallen angels. I know I'm a scientist, but yet I understand that science is also metaphysical. There's a lot in science that we don't understand. For example, entities that exist in another dimension. Science is now proving that there are other dimensions that exist. And in those dimensions, can be beings that, and I know there are beings that cannot be seen because they don't have physical attributes. So those entities affect our mind, though, and our spirits, and cause us to be disbelieving. And this is a whole problem with people, man, God's creation, not recognizing their creator. But anyway, you're doing the right thing by keeping your mind on God's presence, because you're struggling like a salmon swimming upstream against the demonic barrier, a smoke screen of belief that this God must be here, because why is your heart beating? Your heart would never get that signal, that electrochemical signal to keep it beating. It's like a spark to a spark plug. Without that spark, that piston is not going to fire in your engine, and the car is not going to go. You need that spark, electrochemical spark. Somebody has to determine that it's going to occur.
Well, my heart just beat kind of fast now, because I don't know if everyone heard that, but boy, a plane come awful close. I mean, it was pretty loud. We've got a call here. We've got Ira on the line. Ira, welcome aboard.
Hello, gentlemen. This has been a great conversation tonight so
Thank
far.
you.
Are you hearing me okay?
Yes, I
Yes,
am.
I can.
Okay.
Did you hear that plane?
I did. Yeah, I heard it. I heard something. I wasn't sure what it
Because
was.
if you didn't, I won't mention it again. But yeah, it was awful close. Go ahead.
I just wanted to toss in here real quick while you guys were discussing the fracking thing in the water that's being injected, and the fact that the earthquakes seem to be related. I can totally agree with that. If you think about things in this way as well, water is like one of the only substances that does not compress. Oil does. So I think that's one of the problems, is that when we see earthquakes occur, they tend to be a little bit lighter because the oil is actually compressing and it's acting like more of a shock absorber, whereas a water injection actually acts as more of a solid material, so it causes the earthquakes to be that much worse, basically.
That's a good point. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Ira.
Yeah, you bet. I just thought I'd toss that in there for you guys, and just for kind of sake of knowing.
Yeah, I mean, we should know that, because the floods are just horrendous, and
They've
been occurring all over the earth. I mean, we forget. It's so easy for us to forget these disasters, flood disasters. But I can, again, because I've been following the Weather Channel, I've got videotapes, and you can go on YouTube and look it up. Australia, the entire continent of Australia was underwater practically just a few years ago, but nobody remembers it now, that great catastrophe. The entire nation of Pakistan, I believe, was underwater, but nobody remembers it. Poland had horrendous flooding, caused great deaths. Nobody remembers that. Portugal, Spain, England. I remember in England there was such floods. It was so disastrous, and it's happened a number of times. So just to let you know that these floods are occurring around the world, and the fact that the water is instrumental, or the weight of the water and the non-compressibility of water is instrumental in causing earthquakes that are going to be precipitated by the flooding. So it's important to know that the floods, the earthquakes are all related. So
Burnt like charcoal.
well, because, okay,
Oh, go ahead. No,
they are revolving around the sun. Earth would crash into the sun too, except that Earth is revolving around the sun, and it's a centrifugal force, that outward centrifugal, fuge, from the word fugitive or fleeing, centrifugal force, which is a force which is directed away from the center of an object traveling in a circular motion, that prevents any object, such as a planet, from being pulled in by the centripetal or center-seeking force of the center pulling object, such as the sun. So you have the centripetal force of the sun pulling the object in, and then you have at the same time, coincidentally, you have the centrifugal or outward fleeing force of an object. As you know, when you're driving your car and you make a sharp left turn, what's going to happen? Or make a fast left turn at 90 degrees,
you're going to fly.
Your body
right.
is pulled to the right, along the right side of your seat. And this would be centrifugal, an example of centrifugal force pulling away. And that's what prevents the planets from crashing into the sun.
Oh, okay. And now somebody had asked also, he thought Mercury didn't rotate. I didn't know that. Mercury doesn't rotate?
I don't know. They cannot declare that it is, but they can say it might be. Let's check it out. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, yeah, I learned my lesson the hard way, too. There's been a few times in my radio career that I thought that, hey, this is it, and I passed it around, and, came back to bite me, although I was, man enough to admit that I made a mistake, and others out there don't.
Well, we all do. I mean, you've shown that you're human. I've made mistakes, too. So, but we continue on, and that is what human nature is. The honest form of human nature should be about is you try your best to be truthful and to the best of your ability, and you recognize your own mistakes. Those who ignore their mistakes don't have the integrity, I guess, or they have too much pride to admit it, and it's a shortcoming of all of us, I guess.
Exactly. Hey, John, we've got a couple good questions in the chat, and it'd be nice if they private message them to me because they are good questions. One says, makes you wonder why a comet doesn't just keep on going. Surely the pull of the sun, etc., isn't that strong so far out, but I could be wrong. So that's a good question. How come how much pull does the sun have on how far out? Can it affect these objects?
Okay. Comets very often come close to the sun. I mean, that happens all the time. They come into our solar system. Some, I'm not quite sure about that. Earth rotates every 24 hours, and that's what gives us day and night. While Earth is rotating, it's also revolving around the sun, and it takes roughly 365 days for Earth to make one full revolution around the sun, and each day is one rotation. So it's wonderful how God set up this synchronicity of motion to create a viable life on planet Earth.
It is incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. So you can't deny it.
It cannot be a coincidence. It cannot be. It's just too astounding and too unlikely to be a coincidence.
Yeah, you cannot deny that there's some intelligence somewhere behind this. I mean, and it's not just us, but there's other solar systems out there that I'm sure are just as lively, if not more so.
Well, just imagine how great God is. He would have created maybe countless solar systems and galaxies with life so abundant that we just can't imagine the magnitude and the vast numbers of life forms that are out there.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, and makes you realize that when you stop and think about it, God, according to the people, men who have been contacted by God and who show evidence that they were not crazy, but they were actually given messages from God. these men say that this creator who spoke to them, perhaps even in thoughts, doesn't even have to be a voice, just thoughts in their mind. They are told that God.
I've heard about it for a long, long time. I mean, when I first heard about it, I didn't know all the stuff I know now about it. I thought of it as just this happy place we might end up one day. Then I, hear it mentioned later as this object that's going to cause problems, and I says, well, damn it, 83, I remember hearing about it. So I've always given it some credence, and that's why I cover it, and that's why I'm waiting for somebody to say, hey, there it is, because I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I just don't know where.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, right now, this is a key time in history for the human race because the Atacama large meter submillimeter array of radio telescopes, 66 radio telescopes set together in an array, has detected radio of electromagnetic energy radiating, transmitted back, radiated from sublight portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And it has detected what they say is Planet X. They believe it's very likely Planet X. They're trying to be scientifically conservative in their response, in their report, which is quite responsible of them, because that's the way scientists should operate. When they see something, they think they know it's Planet, them get so close that they actually crash into the sun. I mean, we've seen that with the SOHO satellite in space, which sits out there and constantly monitors the sun. You see these, looks like discs or frisbees flying into the sun. You'll see this from time to time. Yeah. And these are comets that are actually got sucked right into the sun. Some of them graze the side of the sun and are destroyed. So it happens quite a bit. Now, it's a function, the amount, how far in a comet will come toward the sun is a function of the velocity of the comet, which means it's related to its momentum, and the mass of the comet. So you take the mass times the velocity, and in physics, mass times velocity is equal to momentum. So it's the mass of the comet, its velocity at the time, all of these things, and of course the velocity is determined by its distance from the sun at that particular any given time, and because the distance creates a gravitational. The distance is a function of the gravitational pull of the sun, and the greater the gravitational pull, the greater the acceleration, the greater velocity, etc. So it's a variable thing. I'm sorry,
and oh no, it's quite all right. And there's a kind of a follow-up on this. That first question was from Bear. He said not quite a question, but I thought it was worth bringing up. JH says, why hasn't Venus and Mercury been sucked into the sun or